All right. Jordan, hey, thanks for joining me on the podcast. Good to finally get you on. We've been communicating. We've had a few hiccups from blizzards to flooded apartments and everything else. So, if anything, we've been flexible.
Yeah.
uh, but yeah, I'm excited to get you on. It's kind of almost serendipitous. I finally get you on today that we're recording. It's International Women's Day. So there we go.
Yeah. I think it's really awesome. I saw
Yeah.
that today we got a notification our team sent out something. So,
Oh, yeah, I saw a couple different things. Yeah, that I mean, it makes sense for the team to send something out. Um, but the first question I ask every goalie I have on the podcast is, how did you get started in the game, aside from being a kid growing up in small town Minnesota?
yeah. So, my older brother, Jackson, he's 3 years older than me. And he was always a kid that just like loved to move and go. And so, my parents signed him up for hockey and he absolutely loved it. And his friends actually had a lot of younger siblings that were my age, and so we would hang out all the time as like families. I would go to his games, and I knew as soon as I was able that I was like, I really want to try hockey. Like I always loved to do what he loved to do. So um, I started right before I turned 4. So a few days actually before my 4th birthday in mini mites, and it's just ever since then, there's no turning back. My program, I grew up in St. Peter, Minnesota, so pretty small town. We're co-opted with Lee Sewer, so really it was like my high school team was like a co-op of 9 different towns. So there wasn't very many opportunities for girls. Tying back to that International Women's Day, it's been the growth in this sport has been incredible, even to witness. Like I played boys hockey all the way up until U12s when I was 8, and then from U12s I was 13 and had to play varsity. Like there wasn't a whole lot of opportunities for girls my age in between there, and being able to do that really shaped who I am as a person, I think, and as a goalie too, probably.
Yeah. Now you mentioned small town southern Minnesota. I remember you talk about how the schools are small, so they got a co-op. And when I was at St. Mary's, I would do stats for high school football games that Dean Beckman was calling on the radio. And God,
Yeah.
who was it? I can't. Um, Lewis and Altura, a co-op team, two different
Yep.
schools together. But I still remember on homecoming night, half the team at halftime is running into the locker room, and the other half is taking their helmets off and picking up their instruments because they're part of the marching band at the same time. It's like, all right, this is small town, you know, southern Minnesota, where that's just the way it is. Um, so you get into the game because you're following in your older brother's footsteps, but what drew you between the pipes?
Um, I don't know. I tried it when I was really young and I loved it. There's a picture of me at Don Roberts, the Gustavus rink, and I've got a little bubble on and I'm wearing the goalie pads. I'm like shorter than the boards. I just loved it. Like it's a whole nother level to the game. Like it's one thing to understand the game and play the game. And I think for me, it was a whole added mental challenge to be able to like not only manage all those aspects of the game, but then almost have to figure out a way to manage the mind game behind it all too. So I just loved it. I loved that I could like single-handedly kind of play a role in how the game went. And as a goalie, you can't control the outcome all the time, but being able to know that if I could do that, that would be pretty sick. So
Yeah. Now, you try the pads on, like most kids and mites, because it's your week to do it. Uh, were you kind of going half and half, in squirts, or was it like, no, this is where I belong. I don't want to rotate anymore. Just give them to me every week.
when we were in mites, that's when we had to first start rotating. And so I was too young to actually move up to squirts. So they like made a squirt C team of all the kids that were too young to play in regular squirts. So it was just a bunch of like really young kids And so we rotated goalie, but I had already kind of decided at that point that it was like what I really wanted to do. But me and this other kid, Andy Regner, we rotated. I don't remember how often, but so I did still skate out. And then after that year, I went up to U12 and I was like, I'm committed. Like I turned 8. I was like, this is what I want to do. I love doing this. Like I 100% knew that that was where I wanted to go.
That's awesome. So, like you said, you played with the boys most of the way, but then you reach that what is it, 7th grade when you can play high school hockey is in Minnesota if you're good enough, and that's when it's like, all right, onto the girls team now. What kind of transition was it going from playing with the boys to now playing with the girls? Because we can't deny it is a slightly different game without checking and just I would say the male testosterone.
I think it's actually really funny because I remember like just in the locker room, like boys are a little more rowdy. Not that girls can't be rowdy, but especially like I played in squirts with the boys.
Yeah.
So they were always wanting to just like go and do all this like random stuff. And I was like, can't we just not? And
Yeah.
not that I didn't love that experience, but like looking back, you never really realize how different it is until I got to U12s and, girls are more cliquey and everybody likes to do pretty much the same stuff. Whereas it's like the boys are always doing something like way off the wall,
Yeah.
out of pocket. And then coaching now, even like I coached squirts, Pee-wee's level a few summers ago, like the whole summer. And it's just interesting because most of the kids I coached were boys. And at that point, I'm like looking back and I'm like, wow, I like, wonder what I was like at this age. And they're just like running around crazy, like spitting ideas all over the place, what they want to be doing. And they just really are 100% all the time.
Well, like I don't mean this in a mean way, but they're just morons.
Yeah.
Like in the most lovable way, they're just morons. Like they get this idea, like, hey, let's try this. Let's see how it goes. It's probably going to end terribly, but we won't know if we don't try.
Yeah.
I remember when I worked the St. Mary's hockey camps in the summer. The one summer I stayed all summer driving the Zamboni, but I still worked with Donnie and the goalies over lunch. And, we had 5 weeks of boys, and it started from squirts through high school. And then we had 2 weeks of girls. And that was, I think the first week was like U12s, and the next week was high school. And it was night and day difference. Like you said, the boys are just run. What kind of pranks can we pull on each other?
Yeah.
But from the coaching standpoint, like I had to tell the boys to do either not do something or do something like 15 times before it clicked. Where with the girls, they had an attention span. So I could tell them once and like they got it. And now they still played the pranks. But their pranks, I think, were a little more thought out and not just like, oh, let's put tape on the skates. Like I walked into the locker room the one day and my gloves were taped together. So I started taping and it was like every 3 feet, the tape was ripped. So it wasn't just like one continuous. I was like, you gotta be kidding. Like I'm laughing because it was funny, but I had to find out who did it and get back at them. But like the boys, it's just like, let's just put tape on their skate blade. They couldn't come up with anything better than that.
They get a lot of the bro talk, like the hockey lingo talk going.
Yeah.
That's like squirts is usually the age where they think that's like the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
So they're like chirping each other, throwing around like jokes and stuff. And I'm just sitting here like laughing. It's so hard not to laugh at them, but it's like,
yeah,
it's funny. They're funny. And
Yeah,
it's no,
they've
we gotta
watched-
get back to doing.
they've watched a little too much Letterkenny.
Yeah, exactly. Like enough to be dangerous, but not enough to actually know what's going on.
Yeah, and not enough to know that it's kind of inappropriate for them to be watching it, but enough for it to still be funny for them.
Yeah, exactly.
So you mentioned you're from St. Peter. You mentioned the Gustavus rink because Gustavus is in St. Peter, and they got a pretty darn good women's hockey team. Right? They just won the MIAC playoffs again. They got the Carroll brothers down there coach. In fact, I had Steve on the podcast not that long ago. what made you choose to go 2 hours east and go to St. Mary's instead of, right in your backyard so mom and dad could come to your home games every week?
I feel like for me, it was really just proximity. Like I felt
Mm-hmm.
like I had to kind of like leave, experience something new, something different. At St. Peter, I actually also swam and did track, and our swim team, we swam at Gustavus. So
Mm-hmm.
we would practice there, host meets there. We spent a lot of time just kind of like hanging around on campus. And
Yeah.
so it almost felt like I had already been there, already kind of done that. And I
Yep.
was looking for something new. And we always joke about like the last school I visited. My mom was like, "This is the last one. Like last one you're gonna look at. Like otherwise you just gotta like pick one." And I went to St. Mary's, and I just like knew. And
Mm-hmm.
I had been kind of holding out because everybody tells you you're gonna get that feeling,
Yeah.
and then also everybody tells you that like, but actually that never happens. And so I was kind of like holding out for that feeling, and I came to St. Mary's, and I was like, "This is it. Like these are the people. This is the place I want to be." Like it was the perfect distance. The bluffs are awesome, and it had
Mm-hmm.
all the programs to set me up for success too.
Yep.
And then on top of that, like coming into a culture where I absolutely like loved the teammates. When I met the team, I was like, this is a place I would love to call home. I was already sold. And at that point, there wasn't really any changing my mind.
It's funny you say that because I'm originally from Chicago, so I took one of the bus trips up from the Chicagoland because, as you know, half the schools from the Chicagoland area. So
Yep.
they have bus trips up, and like one of my coaches, he had graduated from there, and so I heard about it. And one of my good friends from high school, her parents went there, so I'm like, I'll check it out. I took the bus trip, and I was like, yeah, I like it here, and I wanted to play hockey, so I thought maybe I would have a chance, even though nobody was recruiting me. I'm like, yeah, maybe I'll go up there. I'll play some hockey, and somehow it worked out. But then our niece, she was like 2 years old. Would come. I met my wife my sophomore year, so and she's from the cities, which is why we now live in Minnesota. But her niece would come visit us, and she was like 2 at the time. And then when it came time for her to pick school, she was going around to all of them, kind of like some. And then she chose St. Mary's because she said once she got on campus, she's like, it felt like home. I was like, well, yeah, it did, because you've been coming here since you were 2 years old. But it's that thing. And for St. Mary's students, it's just kind of like you step on campus and you're like, yeah, this is where I belong.
Yeah. I remember that I actually ended up having this professor later, but I was just on a visit, and I don't know if you know who Dr. Minerath is.
Mm-hmm.
But she's the absolute best. She was my advisor all my years here, and just like I was just a random student out on a tour, and I remember she just like was walking with another faculty member and took a second to even just stop and be like, "Hi, what's your name? Like, it's nice to see you here."
Yeah.
And like went out of her way, like professors went out of their way, even these random people just like walking around campus saying like, "Oh, hi, how are you? Like, how do you like it so far?" All these things that even in like Minnesota, we run into people in the grocery store, and it's like, "Oh, hey," like
Yeah.
a little wave and kind of a walk on, but they had like made a point to make me feel like I was supposed to be there and that I was welcome there. And I think that was what really sold me too.
Yeah, I remember when I was there, brother Louis was our president, and like he would just walk through campus and sit down with groups of people, start talking like, how was class today? How are things going? Then we had this other brother Chris. He would talk to people, and then he'd look at his watch and be like, you guys want to go to Perkins? My treat. And we're like, what do you mean? He's like, I know you guys are eating cafeteria food. I can take you guys out every once in a while. And it was like every couple of weeks, he was just taking, random groups of students out to Perkins. Like, but that was the thing. I mean, I've been out of St. Mary's 20 years now. And Dean Beckman, I can still walk on campus and he knows who I am. So some of the other teachers I had that are still there, it's like they know who you are as a person, not just a student in their class, which makes a huge difference. And they care. They actually do care about you. I mean, Donnie, I text him every now and then still to this day. But I mean, Donnie's a treasure on that
Donnie's the
campus.
best. He's the best.
Yeah. Oh my God, he's so funny too. I mean, I had this bad habit of calling everybody dude when I got on campus. He broke that of me real quick. It was he wasn't going to have any of that. And Waro just scored a beautiful one time in order to take a 2-1 lead. For those listening, the boys high school hockey state tournament's going on right now, so I have the single A quarterfinal game on my second monitor. But then I forget what was going on, but Donnie's son, Andy, he was like, I think a squirt at that time. He was just sweeping up at hockey camp, and we're sitting there on the stairs to go to the rack over by the men's locker room. And Donnie just said something. He's like, can't you give me any respect? And he's like, no, respect is earned, not given. And I was like, oh, but it was a valuable lesson. Like, okay, all right. But, all these years later, I think I've earned his respect.
It's funny. He's honestly, and a few years ago, he, got nominated in the Hall of Fame. And I think people don't realize how much he goes out of his way for all of us. Like, we have senior night, and he makes sure to put together the programs for each of us seniors to keep long-term, gets them bound. And then he goes and prints off these posters for us that our coaches then frame. And he's a really key part of providing that special experience on senior night. And he really goes out of his way for all of us. And I think that's something that not really a whole lot of athletes realize, but he honestly fills in all the gaps. He does everything. He does the social media. He does the write-ups.
Yep.
I cannot imagine. He can literally do everything.
I think when people look at how much the St. Mary's Sports Information Department puts out, they think it's a department and not just Donnie. I mean, it is mind-boggling how much he puts out. And I think back to when I was there, when he had 2 young sons that were playing hockey, and he was also coaching at that point in time. He was the varsity goalie coach, and it's like, how did you find the time to sleep? Because I mean, right after a game, he's on his laptop just pounding away, getting the post-game report out. And he just, I mean, I see why him and Dee take their national park trip every summer. It's like he needs something to unwind. And I remember talking to him. He kind of likes that he doesn't have to do the driving anymore because of his degenerative eye disease. Takes a little bit off of him there. But God, what Dee too. I mean, she's a saint to put up with him.
Yeah.
I remember I've told the story on the podcast before. My freshman year, it was 20 some odd goalies trying out for the 6 spots because we had a JV team back then. Okay. And we had 5 returning goaltenders showing up, and then my buddy Alan Knowles from Hermantown, who was recruited. So in theory, all 6 spots were taken. I beat out a returning goalie for the 6th spot, and I'm like, what the hell did you guys see in me? Because I was not the 6th best goalie out there, and Donnie confirmed my suspicion from all these years that I was a locker room guy. I brought the intangibles, but it was like, what did you see? And one of my buddies too, he said I had the fastest door in the Mayak. I was like, okay, thanks a lot. So, you choose St. Mary's for so many things, more importantly, what's your major, that they have it because their curriculum has changed since when I was there, it was very art and theater heavy, and now they're doing away with those programs. It's and science was just budding at that point.
So I graduated last May in 2022 with a double major in biology pre-physical therapy. So a biology degree with kind of odds and ends prerequisites for PT school. And then leadership. My leadership major was actually an individualized major that Dr. Sorvag and I put together. So technically it was the first, which is pretty cool. We only had a minor at the time. And then after graduation, prior to graduation, I decided I want to take a 5th year. because we got that extra year of eligibility from COVID.
Yep.
And I knew I liked leadership a lot, and we have a program here at St. Mary's, organizational leadership. It's all online.
My wife's taking that right now.
Yep, because it's online, I'm able to double up. I can actually take 2 years at the same time and just be a full-time student.
Yep.
And so I'm actually graduating in the end of May with that degree.
Okay. Yeah, my wife is just starting the second class of that master's program right now.
Yeah, it's a valuable one. I think I've gained a lot of not just like book knowledge. Obviously, I'm not a business major, so some of these classes I'm like, I don't know what insurance is or human resources. Like I have no practical knowledge of like how businesses work. But a lot more than that, like a lot of the classes are more focused around like what is engagement? Why does it matter? How can we increase it? Like, and they've been really, really good about helping me figure out how to apply that in the context of my life. Because obviously I haven't really entered the workforce. I haven't been in the workforce for 10, 20, 30 years yet. So,
well, and what's interesting too, at least from what I've heard of her talking to me about it, is it's really driving home the fact of the different, not personalities, but working and learning styles of different people. And not only, okay, yeah, accept that they have them, but how do you interact with those different people? What drives them? And, at your age, that's going to be huge as you go into, your profession, because you've got that knowledge off the bat versus having to learn it on the fly. But when I've interviewed for jobs, people are always like, well, what else should we know about you? And I always tell them, like, I'm an athlete. I've been a part of a team, and I know that there's different personalities. We have to figure out how to work with those different personalities. Doesn't mean it was, my freshman year when our coach Mander told us, like, you guys don't have to get along when you leave the rink, but when you're on that ice, you got to perform together. It's the same mentality at work. We don't have to go to happy hour together, but when we're in the office, we better be on the same page.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's always funny because I'm an analyst. I'm a digital marketing analyst. And so like I'm part of the marketing team, but I kind of work on my own. And I'm always asked, like, are you okay, kind of doing your own thing as a part of the team? I'm like, yeah, I'm a goalie. That's been my whole life. Like I'm a part of the team, but I'm kind of that weirdo off in the corner.
Yeah.
It's like, it's almost the perfect role for a goalie. One of the things I loved about St. Mary's was the ice rink. It's just such an awesome little barn, the big ice, great ice. Although, is Denny still doing the ice, or did he retire?
He retired.
I was gonna say he took such good care. But the locker rooms are awesome. The women's locker room is better than the men's locker room by far, because it's just it was built later and they thought it out. It wasn't just like, oh, we have this little space, but it's just an awesome rink in general. And they didn't have the foyer when I was there. That came after I graduated, but it's just a great little barn I think it's probably the best one in the MIAC.
I would agree. I think just in general, we have the advantage having our rink on campus. I don't think a lot of people realize how big of a deal that can be, because they don't, like, during the day, the ice is open. We can go out there and do individual skill sessions or goalie sessions or whatever. We can skate whenever we want. So being able to go out and develop those on-ice skills essentially in a limited amount during the week is definitely underrated. I mean, thinking about St. Kate's or Bethel or Concordia, where it's a commute to the rink every day.
Yep.
And the ice is booked during school hours, so it's not like they can just go out there whenever they want. Like, they have to figure out ways to translate their on-ice performance to off-ice training.
Right.
And I think just in general, that's something that's super underrated.
Because some of the other schools that do have rinks on campus, like Gustavus, it's still a community rink. So during the day, ice is rented. Before games, ice is rented. I know Jay Reska, he was one of my teammates.
He's the best.
I got a story about him. I have several, but there's one that's okay to share, I would say, on the podcast. But I know he'll rent ice out to Winona and whatnot, but it's after the season,
Yeah.
after our needs are done for it. My favorite story with Jay, it was during captain's practices, and at the time, what is now the dry stall locker room for the men's team, that was the JV locker room. But
It's so small.
yeah, it is small, but it worked out because I mean it was what it was. I liked it, but during captain's practices, we used all four of those locker rooms because you had all the kids trying to make the team. But returning players, because varsity locker room typically wasn't allowed except for seniors at that point during captain's practices. So we're all the returning players were in that old JV locker room, and Jay's in the locker room right next to me, and him and one of these other players, they have a prank war going. And I don't know what Jay did to him, but Jay wasn't at the rink yet, and Greg Wirtz was the guy's name. Last I heard, he's a pilot for like Alaskan Airlines now, which is mind-boggling considering he didn't last very long at St. Mary's. But he comes in and he looks at me, and I forget who is sitting on the other side. Jay, he goes, you empty your lockers, otherwise it's getting soaked. And I was like, give me like 2 minutes. I've almost got all my stuff on, then I'll empty. He's like, all right, fine. So I put my stuff, across the locker room, and he comes walking in with a giant cooler of water and ice, and just hauls it right onto Jay's locker. And Jay would come to the rink like 10 minutes before he had to be on the ice, and he comes in and like water's still flowing out of his locker, and he just opens it up and everything's just
comes out,
just sopping wet as if he just jumped into the pool. And he's like, I got to put this stuff on because I got to be on the ice. And it's just so funny watching him put it on, because not only is it wet, but it's cold, wet water. And then he pulls his skates on, and water's literally like squirting up out of his skates as he's putting them on. And he's walking to the ice, and you just hear squish, squish, squish. And there's just a trail of water like behind him as he's walking out to the rink. But yeah, that's one of the funnier Jay stories that I would say are shareable.
Yeah, Jay's his kids, when I coached here a few summers ago, I stayed during the summer and worked at the rink, and getting to skate with his kids are the best. But his youngest son, Marty, is so funny. He's so funny. He's just like a little goober, and he's so cute. It's just like every time you see him, you just want to like pick him up and squeeze him. Like, he's so cute. And he just says like the funniest, like just dry comment that is just like so straightforward, and it's just hilarious for no reason. Yeah. And I'm just like, I can only imagine where he gets that from.
Yeah, I mean, he clearly gets it from his dad, clearly gets his looks from mom, though. Yeah. Yeah, Jay is he's something else. So I'll leave it at that. So one of the other things that has happened while you're at St. Mary's is an anonymous grant to the hockey program that I think has done wonders. You've been able to see firsthand, how impactful has that been for the women's program? Because that was what I loved about it. It wasn't just, this is for the men's, it's for the hockey program, men's, women's, everything.
Yeah, it's funny you bring that up. And you already talked about the rink. The rink has undergone so much renovation in the last few years because of that grant. Like, we have money now to do that.
Yeah.
So they updated the sound system, fixed it so you can actually hear what you're listening, like what you're playing. It doesn't echo as bad in the rink.
So you mentioned the sound system. My freshman year, our sound system was a 5-disc CD changer in the corner by the doors, where we came out with like 2 big speakers. But then it was that break right before tryouts would start. It was Thanksgiving break is what it was. There's actually a void of like 8 feet between the ceiling and the roof. So because it's so big, they have to have sprinklers up there for fire suppression. One of the heads blew over break, and whoever was working maintenance over the break just saw the light flashing and went to the rink, didn't see anything at the time. So
Yeah.
just turned it off. They came back and there was so much water. They said there was enough water to fill the swimming pool in the arena on the ice. So
Oh my God.
they insurance had to pay for like drywall and everything else. But they were able to put like actual speakers in at that point. And that's when we got I know they call the rink now the nest, but that's the little Donnie called it the nest behind the bleachers
Yeah,
where
like the media booth stuff.
yeah, that's when that was built. But still, the sound system was horrible at that point. But we could hook it up to a laptop at that point, at least.
Yeah.
But it's nice that at least now it's not so echoey.
Yeah, and we have like this cool little thing where they can flip on and off certain lights in the rink. So like during the national anthem, they can light up the flag and shut off all the other ones. And we have like the purge, the beginning of our walkout like playlist is the purge. So, you got like the big alarms blaring and you're like skating out on the ice and they cut the lights.
Yeah.
Then they like light up the line when starting lineups start. I think really just in general, it kind of raises everything, the whole experience for everybody there.
Yeah. Well, and I know it's a small thing, but just the branding around the rink too.
Yes.
It just gives it a not I don't want to say a world-class feel, but it kind of gives it that extra touch that you expect in a big program. And and I know some of the money too is for equipment. Graduating players don't have to turn in their helmets and gloves and breezers anymore because the thought process was you start skating in the beer leagues with that stuff, people notice it. It's a little thing that goes far away. You start seeing more of it and people are like, oh, I see a lot of these St. Mary's kids around, maybe I'll check them out. Does any of that money go to the goalies though? Because I know for us, it was like, okay, when the different equipment reps came, we could get a deal on equipment, but we got breezers. That was it.
Yeah. Last year we got 100% new gear. So I got a new helmet. I actually got my new helmet painted this year. The exact same as my old one because I love the design, just inverted. So it was like navy with red accents.
Okay.
Because we got all new jerseys, whites and navies. And then we got all new pads, pad, glove, blocker, new chest protector. I got a new chest protector this year, new breezers with the new logos and stuff on them. Anything basically we needed, they covered for us. We got unlimited sticks. So coming in even last year, we had all new gear, and now I have gear that's going to last me for however long, and it's still really new, and we got to pick. So we only get we get 30% off at CCM because that's the brand that I usually buy. But like Brian's, we get certain percent. If I would have got Bauer, I would have got like probably 50% or something. But we got to design what we wanted, pick what models, new skates. Everyone got new skates last year. And I think really what they're trying to emphasize is providing the D1 experience at a D3 level.
Yeah.
But like giving us the tools and resources, but also giving us the style, I think has been a huge thing. Because recruits, they come on campus and they see a rink that's being updated and they see new jerseys. They hear about, Normatec boots that we have in the locker room and renovations in the weight room and all these things. And immediately, like, improvement is something that I think catches a lot of recruits' eye.
Well, and tearing down Ed's Hall probably helps too, because
yes,
I lived there freshman year and our dorm shirt said we put the special in special ed. That was not someplace we took prospective students. Well, that's for sure.
It's always kind of smelled like reheated meatballs.
Uh,
I feel like that's the best way to describe it.
yes, yeah. I was gonna say it smelled like a Carnival cruise line.
Yeah, yeah,
But no, it is true. Just that D1 feel at a small D3 college. I mean, it's what 1,200 students for
yeah,
the whole school. I mean, it's a great experience for those that are looking for. But I mean, I think about my time there, and I think it was great. And all equipment we could as goalies was like, okay, Coach Farron could call up the reps, and we could get stuff at cost.
yeah.
To me that was awesome. Sticks were 3 for $20, which even back then was awesome. Granted, we were using wooden goalie sticks still at that point. But I chuckled when you're like, yeah, I have this great equipment. Who knows how long it'll last me. I bought my stuff my freshman year in 1999, and I finally replaced it a little over a year ago. So hopefully yours holds up as well as my Von Legacies did. But yeah, and it wasn't for lack of not wanting to replace them. It was just like, well, they're still in good shape, and
Yeah.
the kids need stuff, so it's kind of selfish. And finally, I was selfish and got new stuff after like 21 years. So one of the things that we can't pass over with you too is you were nominated this year and last year too, if I believe, for the Hockey Humanitarian Award. And that's not a MIAC thing. That's not a NCAA thing. That's through USA Hockey, correct?
Yeah.
So tell me about the nomination and what it was that you were doing for them to nominate you.
So essentially you get nominated by coaches. I got nominated by my coach sophomore year, junior year, senior year. Well, junior year was COVID season. So senior year and then super senior year, which is this year. And it's just basically for work in the community. That's something I've always been really passionate about, and something that has been absolutely great with Sarah, with Coach Murray, is that she is super focused on not even just developing us as athletes, as a hockey team, but making us better people. Her and Cassie are always encouraging us to get out in the community. We did a Think Pink run with Winona Health for breast cancer and raised a bunch of money. We volunteered our time and got to host the little kids section, put on little face tattoos and stuff, which is super cute. And they're always looking for ways to get us in the community. And when Sarah first started here, that was something she came and drove and met every one of us, either in our home state or I was in Winona at that time still. So she came down and I told her, she was like, well, what do you think we can do to improve the culture? And I was like, I think something I'd like to see more of is like off ice development, not in the weight room. Like, I'm not talking weight room. I'm not talking off ice skills. Like, all that kind of comes with the hockey package,
Yeah.
I was like, but I feel like as athletes, we have the platform to make an impact in our communities. And I think that's definitely a platform that is underutilized. I mean, not only do we have sheer man force, I mean, like 30 girls show up and we can run essentially a whole event just by ourselves.
Right.
So being able to just donate even like 2 or 3 hours of our time, we can make a significant impact in supporting whatever it is going on in the community. And that was always something that I was very passionate about prior to Sarah even getting here. And to have her on board with that, she's like, absolutely. I think we need to be doing more volunteering, encouraging, figuring out ways that we can get not only our athletes, not only us, but other athletes in the athletic department out into the community. And so I was always volunteering at the Humane Society. So I'd go walk the dogs. There was a point sophomore year where I was there more hours in a month than days. Like, I would spend probably 40 hours a month walking those dogs, and I would go like every other day for like a few hours, and I loved it. And
is that really volunteering though?
yeah.
I mean, everybody I know that volunteers at the Humane Society is doing it because they want to play with the
Yeah,
animals.
a little bit of that too, for sure. I always tell coach my favorite part of volunteering is it's almost like self-care. Like,
Yeah.
people ask you like, why aren't you at home? Like, I don't really watch movies. I don't even own a TV. Like, I don't really like sit around a whole lot. I like to like go and do things. And for me, like knowing that I can make even like a sliver of an impact or like help someone even in like a little way, like makes me, it's like almost self-care for me. Like it makes me feel good. So I'm like, gosh, I can do something that impacts someone else. Like that is just next level.
Yeah.
And so I was doing that. I was on the foster board for Elma Tales of Hope. I have raised 2 batches of bottle baby kittens for them now. 3. I'm currently getting the rest of this round adopted right now. And so I was sewing masks when COVID hit and been involved in a lot of even on-campus groups. She really thought that was something that should be recognized, and she nominated me, and then I got the email that I had been nominated. I really wasn't even sure what it was up until that point, but
Yeah. No, and it's awesome, and it's true too, especially in Winona. I mean, the St. Mary's uh, student body carries weight in that community, more so than Winona State. And it's really a focus of the school to do good in the community, so people appreciate that. That's for sure. And I think that's awesome. So that leads me to the question of what are your post St. Mary's plans? What do you plan to do here in I was going to say a few short months, but if we're being realistic, it's a few short weeks.
yeah, that's true. Graduation's definitely snuck up on me, that's for sure. The end of season, I always joke, I'm like, oh, I'm going to need 3 weeks to just kind of like wallow in a little self-pity,
Yeah.
Haven't really hit that point because we're dealing with the whole ankle business still. So
Yep.
we just kind of delayed the inevitable. As of right now, I'm heading out to North Carolina. I got accepted into PT school at
Where at?
Duke.
Okay.
Yeah.
I asked because my dad lives in North Carolina, but
Oh.
he's in the Wilmington area, but I was just in Raleigh 2 weeks ago now for the Stadium Series game.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah. From what I hear, there's decent beer league hockey in the Raleigh area. So bring your equipment, rehab that ankle, and keep skating.
Yeah.
So that'll be fun going out there. Duke has got, you talk about reputations, for healthcare. Duke, it's no Mayo Clinic, but it's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
We are pampered, not just in Minnesota, but more specifically, in the Winona, Rochester area of having the best hospital in the world. But no, that's exciting to have that on the horizon. Like I said, it's only a few short weeks. I had that realization today that my kids are, done with school here, and gosh, I think it's like 10 weeks. I'm like, oh my goodness. Yeah. It goes quick, that's for sure. And I think I remember sending you a message like right before your last game or something saying, enjoy the last weekend. Because I remember my last games, it was at the Augsburg Ice Arena. Last time I got to take that Cardinal sweater off, and I had a lot of pride pulling that jersey over my head every game, and it was really hard to take it off that last time. Yeah,
it was. There's a lot of conflicting emotions about my last game. I mean, first period, I knew that was going to be it kind of, but to start the game, I mean, I made the first save of the game on like a mini breakaway, and I dropped routine save, went to get up, and my ankle just like popped, and it was just shooting up my leg, and I didn't really even know what to do at that point because there's so many things going through my head. I'm like, there's no way that just happened. Like,
right.
This is my last game. Like, I can make it. Like, I've got to push through. And then the play is like down in the other zone, and I'm like, can't even stand on it on my one leg. And there were so many things going through my mind at that point. It was like, it's over. I don't know what to do. Like, I'm still on the ice. I need to get off the ice. I can't move. Like, I can't skate. And then I ended up coming back in the zone, and I told my co-captain, Sid, I was like, I need a whistle. Like, I need a whistle. And the puck, girl shoots it from the blue line, ended up going wide by a few inches, but I dropped. I was like, if I'm going to go out, like, I've got to make the save. And it was like my whole leg. I couldn't even, like, my ankle was attached to my pad, couldn't dig it into the ice. So my whole, like, inside of my knee, my whole groin just went rip. Oh. Like, it was terrible. And we got the whistle, iced the puck, and everybody just kind of, like, looked at me. And my coach, Cassie, on the bench was like, oh, like, it must be your pad. Like, there must be something wrong. And I started skating to the bench on my one leg, and it was like I got maybe 15 feet away. And she looked at me, and she was like, looked at Sarah and said, something's wrong. And I just lost it. Like, I knew that it was the end, but in my mind, I still had a whole game, in between that and the end. And then I never really got that ending I was looking for.
Yeah, it wasn't on your terms.
Yeah, and I think that's probably going to be something that's going to probably grind my gears for quite some time moving forward still. But it's hard for the ending just in general, and then to not let it end in the way that you've been, like, preparing for or anticipating. Like, it was Concordia's senior night. I was readily prepared to go out there and come back in the second night and absolutely steal it. Mm-hmm. Like, the night before, we had lost in a shootout. Our three girls, missed the net, and they had one girl, and she scored. And so it's like, knowing that I let that puck in, and that we technically tied, I guess, but they got the extra point the night before.
Yep,
and not being able to not only finish my last game ever, but, like, that was it. Like, that was going to be my redemption. And then it was going to be like, hit home. We came back. We won it the second day. Full business trip. Like, look what we did. Look what we accomplished. And, I didn't really get that, unfortunately.
So how's the rehab going for you?
Oh, it's going. Today was my first day walking without crutches in, like, 3 weeks. I'm stuck in the boot till surgery. I get surgery April 6th. They've got to go in and stick some new ligaments through my upper ankle and shorten them and provide some extra ligament stuff in my lower ankle, shave down some bones and everything. So that'll be good.
Well, the good news is you'll never have to watch the weather report on the news again, because your ankle will tell you. Oh, exactly. We got rain coming. Oh, there's a snowstorm coming. My wife and I, we can both, when we're both kind of feeling it, we're like, oh, there's a storm coming. We can both feel it. It's funny. I had some concussions while I was at St. Mary's, and so I kind of feel it in my head. The barometric pressure hits me, and she's got some other stuff. Yeah, my first concussion was freshman year, and I was never good at playing the puck. And I come out, I play the puck between the top of the circle and the hash marks. And to tell you how much time we had, I banked it off the boards and hit the guy at center ice. And I watched it, and it was perfectly played. And this kid just came and ran me elbows to the head. This is the one game nobody's mom or dad was there videotaping the game.
Of course.
But I'm told I was parallel to the ice, facing down, and my body did 2 rotations like this before my head hit the ice. Well, it was a delayed penalty, so I just laid there, knocked out, and it was like 10, 15 seconds. When I heard the whistle, I kind of came to and started to get up. So the trainer never came out. Mind you, this was the fall of 1999. So concussion protocol and everything was a lot different. So there's like 10 minutes left in the game. So I literally held onto the crossbar with my glove hand and made a few more saves. And after the game, we always had the box of fruit and sandwiches in the locker room. And I got my top half off, and I'm eating an apple. And I'm looking at this apple. I'm halfway through eating an apple, and I go, I don't like apples. I'm like, something's wrong with me. And one of my teammates, Greg Rose, he goes, might be the hit you took. I was like, what are you talking about? He's like,
Oh no.
go. Why don't you go see the trainer, Bondo? And so I walked down to the trainer's room, and she's like, what are you doing here? It's like, they told me I got hit. And she's like, oh, you got rocked. I'm like, I don't remember it. So then, they just did the simple
Yeah.
eye test, and they're like, yeah, it looks like you have a concussion. Like, shower up. Do you have somebody that can kind of watch you, make sure you don't fall asleep for a while? I'm like, I don't know. I can find somebody. Well, it was a JV game, so we were done at like noon, 1 o'clock that day, and varsity was getting ready to come up and play Hamlin. And Terry Manor was our JV coach, but he was also assistant coach with Coach Olson at the time. And he's like, shower up, get dressed. You're coming with us to Hamlin. We'll keep an eye on you. And poor Brian Trottier Jr., he had to watch me that night because he was a healthy scratch. And like for that 2-hour drive to the city, he's like every little bump on that bus, which is like every 3 seconds. Like,
yeah.
I was feeling like I needed a trash can. I didn't. Thank goodness I didn't. But as I like to look at it, like I don't feel so bad for Trotch that night because he is now a doctor. So it's like, okay, if somebody's going to watch me, it should have been the kid that was pre-med. But then after that, I went to a Hasek style helmet. Because when I was in college, we had to have the bird cage. We couldn't have the cat eye. So I went with the Hasek helmet, just the Cooper combo.
Yep.
And we're sophomore year now. I'm in practice, and one of my teammates, Joe Duda, hard shot, but he had no control over his shot. He winds up from the blue line, and it hits me square on the Cooper logo, cracks my helmet. I'm like, ooh. I saw stars. Luckily, it was the whistle blew like right after that. So then we go to the bench to go over the next drill, and I just stayed there. And the coach looks at me. He's like, "What's wrong?" You go, "I think I got hit in the head again." And he looks at my helmet and sees the cracked helmet. He's like, yep. "Yeah, I think you did too." He's like, "Why don't you go see the trainer?" So I looked at him. It's like, "No." And he goes, "What do you mean no?" And I said, if I go see the trainers, they're going to tell me I can't skate for a week because I probably have a concussion. And he's like, exactly. Go see the trainer. So like I'm skating over there by the time because they would sit in the penalty box during practice at that time. By the time I got to the penalty box, I had my upper half off. And they're like, what's wrong with you? I was like, I got hit in the head, probably have a concussion. I know I can't skate for a week now. And they're like, yep. That's you're done for a week. But yeah, those were fun times.
I've only ever had one concussion, but it was like one of our first practices my freshman year. So I got smoked in the head.
Yeah.
In the side of the head, like right on my temple. We were playing, I don't know if you know what floppy is, but it's like 2 nets and blue line in.
Oh yeah.
And it's a 4-on-2 on both sides, like fake line in the middle you can't cross.
Yeah.
And we had dumped in a new one, and someone was still playing the old one and just smoked me in the side of the head while I was like over here looking this way. I was out for a hot minute. That was back when concussion protocol was like you have to sit in your room by yourself in the dark for days on end. You can't look at your phone or anything. And
yeah,
I was bored out of my mind.
Luckily for me, that first concussion was the last game before Christmas break. So I didn't actually miss any time on that one. But like the first 2-3 days afterwards, I went to class and the teachers are like, go back to your room.
Yeah.
Like I'm giving you credit for being here because they're like, you have to be at class. So they're like, go back to your room. Like there's no point in you being here because you're not retaining anything. I was like, oh, okay. So when I went home, my family doctor had me get an MRI and on my head and everything. And it's funny when you go to the family doctor you like grew up with, they kind of treat you a little bit different than other doctors. And he calls up and my mom and dad weren't home. So he just talked to me. He's like, well, I got good news and bad news. I was like, okay. It's like, what's the good news? And he goes, well, we actually found a brain up there.
Good.
Like, gee, thanks, doc. So what's the bad news? And he's like, bad news is there's nothing wrong and you're just going to have to put up with the headaches for however long they they last. It's like, okay.
Uh,
But like when your family doctor's like, hey, good news, we found a brain up there.
so good. Thank you.
Really, like, whatever happened to professionalism, doc? You know, but like, I grew up, I played baseball with his son. So it was like, he knew the family. Was like, gee, thanks. Yeah. So we've been talking a while, and I appreciate that. So I end every episode with a list of 10 questions. Now, they're the same 10 questions I've asked every single guest. So Donnie's answered them. His son Joey or Andy answered them to all the other goalies I've had. And the first question is, what's the too many hockey pucks for that. Sorry. What is the craziest coaching moment from your playing days where a coach just lost it?
Oh my gosh. One time, Greg Moore, he was our coach my freshman year. He had this bird hat. You know, like the ones where you like kind of squeeze them and the little arms move or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had one and it was like a little cardinal hat. And he wore it. He thought it was the funniest thing. And but it was like every time, I swear that hat was cursed. Like every time he wore that thing, we would practice terrible and then we'd end up getting skated. And so, you know, he'd come out there like super happy, like wearing the hat, and we'd all be like, oh no, like it's the worst. Today's the end, you know, and he loved that hat. It was like every time. And I remember one time he really hated when we mismatched our socks, like socks and jerseys. And we thought it was one day someone said that it would be like really quirky if we just, you know, the lines weren't matching up, people were flip flopping colors, so the jerseys and the socks weren't working. And I remember we got out there and he took like one look at us and he was like, Jason, that was our assistant coach. He's like, you take him today. He was just like, couldn't even do it, couldn't even deal with us. And Jason's like, okay, great. Like, and it was our best practice probably that whole year. And he just like sat there on the boards like, are you kidding me? Like, so mad about the socks. And then that would happen to be like the best practice we had. And oh my gosh, looking back on that, it was so funny.
I would say my craziest moment from my St. Mary's days was our JV coach, Terry. He was trying to kick the habit of chewing tobacco. And we were playing a game, and it's between periods, and he comes, and we're winning this game, but he storms into the locker room, like kicks the door open, and we're like, shit, we thought we were playing okay. And he looks at one of my teammates. He goes, you. And like, he's like, what? And he goes, I know you got chew in your locker. And he's like, and he goes, give me some right now. I need it. And he's like, oh, okay. And like, he grabbed his tin and tossed it to him. He's like, you're not getting this back. You're not supposed to have it. And like, walks out of the locker room. And like, as soon as we heard the door shut, we all just started laughing because at first we're like, we thought we were going to get yelled at. And then like, we thought maybe we're losing a teammate because of, you know, tobacco use. So then it was like, what just happened there? Yeah. He was always trying to give it up, but it never happened. So what's your favorite all-time goalie mask?
All-time goalie mask?
Yeah.
I would have to say my mask. I would say not my newest one because I've only wore it once and it just didn't feel right. Even though, you know, like it's just the updated version of my one I already have, except opposite colors. So like honorary mention to that one. But the mask I got when I came to college, like it is just so meaningful. Like I got it designed by Gilby. He literally did such a great job. And there's every single thing on that mask has some sort of like meaning to me. It's got a little paw print because my home association is the Bulldogs. Has a little frog. That was my nickname growing up. I used to hop on the pucks, do like a little frog splash. So they called me Frog. And like, so that's on there. And my favorite quote by Herb Brooks on the back and all sorts of stuff. And I just think that it ties together perfectly so many of the things I love about hockey that there's no way I could ever pick any other mask.
That's awesome. I remember when I both masks I've had painted, I just went with the simple classic, you know, school designs, but didn't really include any of that special stuff. And as I think about getting one painted now, it's like, those are the things I think about. It's like, what would I want on there? but how the heck would I incorporate that into the design? But that's why you go with an actual artist, because they figure that out. So what's your favorite rink to play at?
Oh, I don't. It's really hard because I really think St. Mary's has, like, personally speaking, but it's also because we have, like, the whole experience that goes with it too. Like, every
Yeah.
time we've got the speaker set up in the locker room, the LED lights, like, everything going on in there, and then we walk out and it's all perfectly timed music that my teammates and I have picked out, and, like, just the experience of it all to have a game day at home is just incredible. It's like every time I think about, like, I can hear these songs in, like, my workout playlist, and it's just like I can see what I'm doing at that moment, like, in our warm-ups, and
you can smell the rink.
yeah, and so it's like there's so many, like, sights and sounds and smells, like, associated, like, I could put myself right back in that moment,
Yep.
that I don't think I could pick a different rink, because this
Right.
is, like, not only do I remember this one the best, but it's so, like, holistic, like, it's got all the parts. I don't know.
No, I 100% get it, and I like that they finally put the rubber down on the floor for the women's team, so you guys
Yeah.
come right out that door by your locker
Yeah.
room and get it. Because when I was there, they had to walk all the way
All the way
down
around.
through the one door, all the way back down through the other. It was like, oh, just get a little bit. We have the rubber sitting under the bleachers. Let's just put it down. Finally, they did.
Yep.
So this is one that always gets people. What's your favorite goalie stick that you've ever used?
My favorite goalie stick? So I tried the Supreme 3S, and I've also tried the new line of the Bauer sticks. We got those this year. I really do like the 2S, the Supreme 2S, the Bauer Supreme. I don't know why. That was, like, right when they came out. It's got the spine on the back, so it's like a paddle on one side, the spine on the other. And I think that was the first stick that I was like, you get a whole extra level of control because it's actually really light.
Yeah.
And before that we had, just the stereotypical, pretty much run-of-the-mill Bauer Vapors. So I really like the Supremes, personally speaking. And even though the new ones, they don't have the spine on the back, I don't know why in my mind I'm like, they're just not the same.
Right.
Because I've got so many new ones. I've got the Supreme 3S, and I've got the new, what are they, the hyper lights?
Yeah.
I've got some of those, and I haven't given them a fair shot, I guess, but I just am a fan of my 2S. Maybe that's just habit. I don't know.
You'll give the other ones a fair shot as the other ones break.
Yep,
and
exactly.
I remember when I was graduating, when I first started, we got Christian sticks and cohos, and then they switched from cohos to CCMs. And the CCM is the coolest thing. It was an okay stick, but I liked the Christians better. Well, I was the only one using them, and there were 6 left in the cabinet. So when I brought Coach Farron my $20 to get 3 more, just so I had some as I graduated, he's like, take all 6 of them. You're the only one that uses them. I'm not ordering again. I'm not ordering them again. So it's like, sweet, not a bad deal. 6 half dozen sticks for $20, and they lasted me a couple of years. Well, I broke 3 of them actually before I graduated because of intramurals.
Yeah.
We had intramurals after the season too, so I broke 3 of them there. But then I had 3 more that I held onto and kept for a couple of years. So, what is your favorite youth hockey memory?
Oh, I would have to say, and I'm thinking of, like, a specific photo in my mind. We played in this Wasika tournament when I played U12s. I think I was 8. That was the first year I moved up. And so it was me and a bunch of older girls. But that was really our first tournament where we actually did anything sort of special. Like, keep in mind, my home team association at the time was terrible. Like, we were not very good, pretty average, below average of the pack. And it didn't help because we, are from all sorts of places. Like, I didn't go to school with half of these girls.
Yeah.
But that also kind of made it a little extra more special when we went to the rink and, that was our time to be with each other.
Yeah.
And we went to this tournament. And Waseca, like, in general, the other teams in this tournament, they had beaten us prior to that. But I remember we got these, like, little mini trophies. And that was just, like, the coolest thing ever. Because I had never, like, besides being on, like, summer teams, where you get to pick kind of what teams you're going to be on, like, we had never really won a whole lot of anything. And that was, like, the first time we had won anything, first time I had won anything, like, really worth anything, at least.
Right.
Like, we had really earned it. Wasn't just, like, a Mite Jamboree medal. And that was, I remember feeling so proud that we, like, miraculously were able to get a trophy at this, like, tournament we were supposed to be terrible at.
Yeah, no, those are fun, especially as a kid. I mean, just tournaments in general and youth sports are fun, especially when you get to stay at the hotel and everything. But then when you do something like that, it's like, hey, we had a good weekend. It worked out.
Yeah.
So what is the best chirp you've heard on the ice, off the ice, directed at you, not directed at you, coming from you?
I don't even know. There's so many good ones. And especially as, like, a goalie, you don't really hear them. And then sometimes, like, Gustavus is always a hard rink to play at.
Well, they have the spit guard over the penalty box. I love
Yes.
that rink for that reason.
Yes,
for its setup.
because they have a great fan section. A great fan section if you play at Gustavus, for Gustavus, a terrible fan section if you don't.
I disagree because I knew what we were in for there, so I appreciated it.
That's fair.
They're creative.
Yeah, and I remember they, like, the first time we went there, they had, like, all his signs everywhere, and it was right before winter break, so it was, like, the last thing that they had.
Yeah.
My freshman year or sophomore year, and we went and someone had made a sign that said, "Go back to Stupidville," and it had a cardinal on it. Of all the chirps that I can come up with, I don't know why that one always pops in. Like, we still talk about that because the security guy had to go confiscate it because it was, like, too mean. And then they had, like, all these other signs that were like number 35, blah, blah, blah. Like, all the personal attacks, but that was the one that I think was so funny because it's like, really, like, you made all these other signs. You obviously looked into, like, all these other things, and that was what you decided to go with.
Right.
Go back to Stupidville. And it was like something on the sign was spelt wrong too. Like, it was just a whole mess.
See, to me, those are the best chirps. So we're like, they're so bad, and, like, they're not even mean. They're just so bad. They're funny. Yeah. And that's why I always love, for me when I was in college, that my buddy, and this is a kid that we played youth hockey together. Then we played at different high schools. So we played against each other. And then I'm literally moving in to Ed's Hall, and he's in the room next. I was like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "I'm going to school here." "What are you doing here?" But I wound up making the team, and he didn't. But he did a lot of reffing down at the Bud King Ice Arena. Poor kid. But he would look at me. He's like, "Yep, you've got the fastest door in the MIAC." I was like, "Yeah, but I play JV." He goes, "Yeah, that's what's impressive about it. You're a JV goalie with the fastest door in the MIAC." I was like, "God, you're a jerk." But okay, I'll take it. And to this day, if I, like, post a picture from the beer leagues, he's like, "Oh, they let you play this game?" It's like, yeah, they're hurting for goalies. They'll let anybody play. So what is the worst post-game? I'm going to change it for you because I know NCAA rules don't allow this. What is the worst post-game beverage?
Worst post-game beverage. We used to get, we stop at Quick Trip now. Like, we split up, like, road trips. So many of us get car sick. It's a whole different thing. And I can't think of a worse road trip drink, but something like, we went to Boston and we all got Chick-fil-A, and that was like, we had, like, sneak out almost to, like, go get this Chick-fil-A. Like, we were allowed to leave. Coaches knew, but they like saw us like running across the road, coming back with like bags and bags of food and like shakes from Chick-fil-A, and they had like put so much work into like putting together this like healthy salad bowl, like rice things from like this shop they got downtown, and I remember people were like running and dropping off these shakes to like everybody in the hotel, like door to door. And like 10 minutes later, we're all sitting in our rooms, like it was curfew, and coach just sends out like a little text in our group me about like, make sure that you're not like eating Chick-fil-A, like all this stuff, taking care of your body after the game, like if you want to play good in the future, like, and we all just were like, ooh, like we just got totally busted. Like I don't know. It was like, it's after a game, it was on a trip, it's Chick-fil-A. I feel like, that's kind of an exception to the rules, but
Right.
like, they thought it was so funny that we were like running across the street to like go get Chick-fil-A shakes. We don't have that in Winona.
Yep. So do they still give meal money on the way home from away games? Because we would get like $5 meal money. It's like, what are you going to get with $5? But we would always get to choose where we were going to stop, and we always chose. I always asked for White Castle. I got outvoted, but we usually stopped at McDonald's because they had the dollar menu, and it's like, all right, we can make $5 go somewhere with the dollar menu. But then those of us that were smarter were like, well, if we pull our money together, like these two can go in and get like 30 chicken nuggets, and then he can go in and get like 3 pops, and now we got,
Yeah.
And so we started getting pretty good at pulling our money together and getting more food that way. But yeah, the $5 meal money, I'm like, what are we going to do with that? But it's funny because Terry, he had a stack of fives as we were getting off the bus, and he would stand there like Lloyd Christmas handing out tips and Dumb and Dumber. He's like, to each one of us as we're getting off the bus. It was like, oh Lord. And we're the poor McDonald's workers. It was always the one in like Red Wing. Bus of college kids pulls in right before closing. Like they're literally putting chairs on top of the tables, and we come barreling in like, we're gonna take whatever you'll give us. And they're like, oh my God, what is going on? Yeah.
We always joke that we're the best fed team in the MIAC. Our coaches, Cassie, literally scouts out like all the best places we can eat ever. Like we go to Noodles, we'll go to Chipotle, we go to all sorts of like when we're up in the cities. One time we went to Casetas, like all sorts of places, and then they'll ask us, like we order sandwiches, so we get sandwiches after home games.
Mm-hmm.
And then, we get to take it home, eat it. So then we get to the rink the next morning, and then we get on the road. And like Cassie even will like get up in the morning and she cooks us like crock pots full of eggs and griddles up bacon, and we make little breakfast bagels with our toaster and like yogurt, strawberry cream cheese, jelly, like you name it. She's got it. Like even for people like I don't really eat dairy, she'll get us like dairy-free yogurt, like dairy-free milk, almond milk, like whatever we want, and like fresh fruit for like yogurt parfaits. And then after the games, we'll like go to all these places that have like super good meals, and it's just crazy. We're way too well fed. It is crazy. We talk about it all the time. Like we're the best fed team in the MIAC. Like we hear about other teams who like get like herbs and gerbs, like a sandwich, or they get just like 35 pizzas from Domino's and that's all they eat. And it's like our coaches would never. We have like well-balanced meals over breaks. We have like catered food. So we have like salads, potatoes with like some sort of like chicken breast. Like Cassie is the best. Sarah too.
Well, that food clearly is not coming from the cafeteria then.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we always looked forward. I know when I was there, the food was so bad. Like a year later, they changed food services because like the students signed a petition. But we looked forward to grilled cheese day because it was like you can't screw
You
up
can't
grilled
mess it up.
cheese. Um, and I would always ask for like 4 of them, and then they had to start giving a 2 sandwich limit while
Max.
you were in line.
Yeah.
So I would eat my 2. I would go back to 2. I would go back. I would eat like 8 grilled cheeses in a meal. And they always looked at me because I drank so much milk that they had these tiny little cups in the calf,
Yeah.
and I
Well,
would get 8 of them because that's what would fit across my tray and just fill them all up. And it was people were like, "You're gonna drink?" It's like, "Yeah, I am." And it's like,
all of it.
that's why I didn't break bones. So when you tape your stick, do you go heel to toe or toe to heel?
Heel to toe for sure.
Okay.
100%.
You are in the majority.
Yep.
Very few have answered toe to heel. And I had 2 different guests that hadn't heard each other's episodes say those that go toe to heel are psychopaths.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would go that far, but there's not many that have answered toe to heel. So what's your favorite number to wear and why?
My favorite number to wear is 34. I was 34, you 12 on up. And then once you're that young, that's like once you have your number, you're like, yeah, this is my number for life. Like you're committed. You sell your soul to this number for really no good reason other than it was like your first, and now it's got to be your only. I got to college. They didn't have a 34 jersey. Womp womp. So I ended up being 35. Honorary mention to 35. Sometimes I forget that that's my number. But like 34, Instagram handle, like all that stuff you throw numbers after, always going to be 34 for sure.
So I was 35 in high school. But when I got to St. Mary's, our senior starting goalie had 35, so that wasn't an option. So I literally went to the cabinet and found the biggest jersey they had. And that happened to be number 39. So that is now my number. Has been since. I've thought about going back to 35 because I really liked it, but I'm like, nah, that 39 fits my personality better.
Yeah. They asked me, they were like, do you want to switch numbers? Because they could have ordered me a jersey, and I was like, nope, already got all my stuff on it. So
yeah.
At that point.
Yeah, it's your college number.
Yeah.
So the last question is, what advice do you have for young goalies?
Oh my gosh. I could come up with so many of these. I'd say number one, believe in yourself, because I feel like as a goalie, kind of like I said in the beginning, you hold a lot of that weight of the game on you. Even if realistically you play the best game of your life, you always feel like you could do better, or that at the end of the day you could have won the game for them, or you lose a game that's close, and it's
absolutely
not.
This last week in the beer leagues, we tied 2-2, tying the top team in the division, and I'm going, I really could have stopped those 2 goals, but they happened, and I still stopped 28 others. So it's like I got to cut myself some slack. It's what was it? Albert Einstein, when he went into the school and started doing math problems, and after like so many, he did one intentionally wrong, and they started laughing at him. He goes, "Why are you laughing at the one I did wrong and not praising the 10 I did right?" And that's how we are as goalies. We focus on what we did wrong, and don't take the time to look at what we've done well.
Yeah. So I would say that kind of goes hand in hand with, I believe that there's a reason for statistics, but I think especially when you're a younger goalie, like not only do you need to believe in yourself, but you also have to know like when is looking at the statistics not helping you. Because I think there comes a point, especially when you're younger, where it can be pretty easy to let yourself and your ability and your success be defined by win-loss records, by your save percentage statistics. And yes, these are all like accurate predictors. Like they can tell you how good you're doing or not. I think there's a lot of other things that come into play in the game too. And especially as a young goalie, keeping that in mind that, statistics are everything. Like,
for a goalie,
too.
I think the only statistic worth looking at as a goalie is expected goals against versus actual.
Yeah.
That's the only good one. As an analyst, to me, that's the only good one.
Yeah. I think save percentage is a little bit better, but then you get into the messy world of like goals against per game. And
Yep.
it's like, well, I could be letting in 3 goals against per game, but it depends who we're playing. It
Mm-hmm.
depends how many shots they're having.
It depends on
Like,
the team in front of you.
yep. And I think it's really easy, kind of with that first part, like believe in yourself. It's really easy to blame yourself.
Yep.
And I think you see bad statistics for one game, and it's really easy as a younger goalie to let that kind of determine your success, kind of get your steam down. I always told myself, like, I would never look at the statistics in high school until we're talking maybe like once a month.
Yeah.
Because I told myself, I never really had a super great, we never made it to state. We never made it past first round of playoffs. But to me, like, the statistics didn't determine, like, my ability. Like, I still had good statistics, but they weren't the best in the league. They weren't the best in the state. But that's also kind of a reality taking into account, the team I had in front of me, the teams that we played against. And
To that point, me and my goalie partner in high school, we liked to look at them when we walked into the rink because our team was not good at all.
yeah,
And we would look at the goals against and we're like, here we are down here. But then we look at save percentage, we're like, here we are up here.
Yep.
That's why we looked at them and see, like, how crazy is this?
Yeah, the gap is for real.
Yeah.
And I think probably just the last piece of advice I would go with for younger goalies would be put yourself out there. That kind of goes with like believe in yourself, but like if I wouldn't have put myself out there and gave myself other opportunities, like in the summer played for different teams, played in the Dodge County League, like doing all these things, playing for all these different coaches. If I wouldn't have given myself out there, then the chances of me getting scouted or recruited, staying at where I wasn't very high. And that's not to say that you have to move to be successful. You absolutely don't. But I think the more experiences you get, the more different caliber, like higher quality shots, right? So in my association, I didn't have the best players in the state, but I could go to the cities. I could travel to Dodge County where there were significantly more successful teams, and I could play with those girls. And that's the easiest way to level up your game, is to put yourselves out there in a way that forces you to be better. Surround yourself with people that challenge you. And that goes with, find a mentor, find a goalie that you think really pushes you to be better, whether that's your goalie partner or a goalie in your association that's older than you, or your goalie coach, or whatever it may be. Maybe it's your mom or your dad. Finding someone that's going to be there when the games are tough, but going to be there to challenge you to be better as well. I think a lot of the times, we have goalie partners. I never had a goalie partner really. I had a few like here and there for a couple years on and off, but I never had one that was really stable on and off through high school. And coming into college, that was something that was an adjustment. Is like you have to realize, having a goalie partner is a privilege to push yourself to be better.
Yep.
It's not necessarily something that's bad.
Yeah. Well, it's cool that you say that, because there are two takeaways there. You talk about finding a mentor. When I was coaching at the high school level, we had it with our teams where they had to adopt one of the youth teams from our area, and they had to go out there. Well, that meant our goalies too. And it was really interesting. Like, it was great for the youth goalies, and we saw some good things out of those younger goalies as they came up through the ranks. But the impact it had on the older goalie, like, they had to think about the position at its most basic level to teach us, work with this younger goalie. And it was a great both ways. But, you talk about at St. Mary's, the goalie partners, I still in some way keep in contact with most of them, whether it be Alan Knowles, who we were skating together in the summer until he moved out to Colorado this year. In fact, I was texting him today because he played for Hermantown. I was like, H-Town won the first game, and my kids go to Matamidi. So I was like, yeah, they're going to play each other again this year. Fun story about Alan is he played in the state tournament his senior year. And there's a goal that was scored on him that was a breakaway where he made a move and they slipped it through his legs. Well, freshman year, as we were watching the state tournament, every time they cut to commercial break, they played that goal every single time. So Al is sitting there watching it with us, and he's allergic to beer. He's Korean, and I guess that's normal in the Asian community to have a allergy to beer, so he can't have any. Most of my teammates are drinking beer, so we're feeling good. And every commercial break, we look and be like, "Hey, Al, you going to stop at this time?" Ah, no, you didn't. It went in again. But so keep in touch with Al. I know Ryan S. Him and I are still texting quite a bit. Dave Rogalski, he was there at that. And now that Dave is with the New Jersey Devils coaching, the Devils are kind of goofy and like letting coaches talk. So haven't had as much conversations with Dave since he's gone over there. But every now and then, Sean Green, it's like all these goalies that I played with. There's only Freddie Hennon, the goalie for my freshman year. He always kept to himself even when we played. So it's like, not surprised I keep in touch with. But like every other goalie from that time, I've kept in touch with. More so than any of I've kept in touch with a lot of teammates, but more so than any of my teammates, it's those goalies. I can send them a text. It's like as if, we were just on the ice together yesterday. Because of that bond we formed there. So, but that is all the questions I have. We've been talking quite a bit. So I thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule because, your season just ended. You've got your rehab going, classes, all of that. So thank you for finding some time to chat with me. It's been fun. Good luck the rest of the school year, and tell Donnie I say hi.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes. Well, again, thank you, and we'll keep in touch.
Yeah, catch you next time.
All right. Bye now. Bye.